I'm surprised, frankly, that she doesn't have more to say about this, given that she and her campaign know that this is one of the main questions that voters have about her. And one of the main things she's been trying to establish as part of her candidacy is the idea that she would represent a break from the past 4 years, and to not be able to come up with something to say in that moment. She continues to not be particularly nimble on her feet in a lot of these interviews, and this is a very obvious question that gave her an opportunity, frankly.
Kamala Harris has been on a bit of a media tour this week, and we have plenty of lowlights to discuss in today's video. So folks, I'm Vince with RTM News. Please do us a big favor. If you enjoy our content, be sure to support by hitting that subscribe button down below. You subscribing goes a long way in ensuring we can keep bringing you these videos. And with that said, it is pretty notable that Kamala Harris, a candidate that has been so averse this entire campaign to doing interviews, all of a sudden this week dramatically decided that I'm going to do as many interviews as possible. I'm going to run around constantly being on TV. To me, it suggests that Kamala must believe she is losing, or the current strategy is not working, right? They must be seeing something in the polls that suggests, okay, Kamala, you got to change it up. You got to put yourself out there. What else really could be the explanation?
Let's just be honest. The Harris campaign is going to do what it believes it needs to do in order to win the race. And that means going on Stephen Colbert's show. That means going on The View on Tuesday. That means going on shows where she's going to be welcomed, where she's not going to be interrogated. And that's just the reality of campaigning, in the same way that Donald Trump usually mostly goes on right-wing shows, like on his friends, Fox News shows. So that's the reality here. But I do think it's notable that Harris is going out and doing a lot of TV this week. It is a sudden change in her strategy, and it aligns with the early voting schedule. She is now out there talking about registering to vote, getting your ballot early, and having a plan to vote. And that's the reason why she's doing all these TV appearances. But let's just be honest.
In that case, where were all of the TV appearances and interviews this entire time? Because if doing that, if logically putting yourself out there is so important and fundamental to winning an election, considering Kamala Harris became the candidate so rapidly and she had such a short period of time to define herself, you would think that should have been what they were doing all along. Unless, again, they must see something that they think is bad news, it's a 5-alarm fire, and they need to dramatically, just a month before the election, do a 180 change in their strategy. It makes sense. I understand why they're doing it, but at the same time, it seems very transparent that something is going on there, and I'm not here to speculate on the polls or exactly what the state of the election is, but they, again, must see something that implies they are losing. The problem with Kamala Harris going out there and doing interviews is she's not exactly great, okay? And in the media circuit for the past week, yes, has she been on TV more? That part I'm sure is true. But on the flip side, she's had quite a few catastrophic gaffes and blunders that have arguably done much worse for her campaign than simply just hiding in the basement. You had the 60 Minutes interview on CBS, which already was a train wreck, but then after that, 60 Minutes got caught and exposed for editing the interview to make her sound better. And she didn't even sound great in the interview to begin with. You had her busting out a fake Hispanic accent in the Telemundo town hall last night. Many other examples of this. But I think that no moment for her this week was worse than the moment she went on The View and declared that she would not have done anything differently than Joe Biden.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's the answer you necessarily want to be giving, okay? It's pretty obvious to me, I would think, that Kamala Harris was not prepared for that question, and she completely screwed that up. I'm sure the Trump campaign is already turning that into a campaign ad as we speak, as would be the smart thing to do, because the entire point of them selecting Kamala Harris was because she's not Joe Biden. Oh, she's someone different. And then when asked, what are you going to do differently than him? She has absolutely no answer. Folks, this was a reply, a response to the question that was so bad. Even CNN began to call it out. Take a listen.
Molly, what do you make of that?
I'm surprised, frankly, that she doesn't have more to say about this, given that she and her campaign know that this is one of the main questions that voters have about her. And one of the main things she's been trying to establish as part of her candidacy is the idea that she would represent a break from the past 4 years, and to not be able to come up with something to say in that moment. She continues to not be particularly nimble on her feet in a lot of these interviews, and this is a very obvious question that gave her an opportunity, frankly, to differentiate herself in a way that would have made news, that would have answered, I think, the curiosity of a lot of voters who want to know how she would lead differently. And she's not very specific in laying that out, and she can't point to a decision she would have made differently, which, in an electorate that thinks that doesn't like the way this administration has led, and that doesn't like the track that the country is on, that may not be a very satisfactory answer.
I mean,
exactly. I don't know who this woman is. She's probably a Democrat, but she was spot on there in her analysis. I could not have said that better myself. But this is, of course, the problem when you send Kamala out on an interview circuit like this, because when she has the entire week, or an entire month in some cases, to prepare for the interview, you can train her on the questions. Here's what you got to say. Here's what you got to do. But when you constantly send her out like this on the daily basis doing these interviews, she has to be quick on her feet. She's obviously not. And that's probably the problem, and the reason why she really has nothing to say to a question like that. It's true.
it's a delicate dance, because it's not as if she's coming in. It's not as if she just fell out of a coconut tree. She's been part of this administration as the vice president for 4 years now. She did later talk about the fact that she would put a Republican in her cabinet, which she first told me over the summer. And then she said, oh, that's something that's different. She sort of added it later.
Sure. This has been the central sort of point of tension when it comes to the Harris campaign. You are framing yourself as a change candidate, but you also represent incumbency. You were a vice president for the past 4 years, and often saying that you were the last one in the room as well when President Biden would make a decision. So it's tough to detach yourself from a president that, consistently in the polls has been unpopular with the public as well. When it comes to
By the way, she's framing herself as such a change candidate. And, she goes out there to claim that she's this type of working class populist trying to use that old school Democrat rhetoric from like your grandfather's Democrat Party. Meanwhile, who is she allied with? Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney. Literally, Liz Cheney is going out to campaign for her. The most corporate warmongering neocons you could possibly get. But yeah, I'm sure Kamala is some type of populist. And of course, yeah, incumbency. You're going to claim to be a change candidate. The easiest line for Donald Trump that there possibly is well, you've been in office for the past 4 years. And when you're pressed on this, because you can use the excuse, oh, the vice president, when you technically really break it down, doesn't do that much. But not only is Joe Biden constantly saying, I don't know if he has different motives in saying this, but he's constantly going out and saying, oh, well, Kamala was there doing everything, right? She was instrumental to shaping the policy of this administration. And then when you are personally asked about it, you can't give an answer on what you would do differently. Well, not a good look for a supposed change candidate, I would say. So yeah, there you have it, folks. I guess it remains to be seen whether or not this interview circuit will ultimately backfire. Because yes, on paper, it is obviously smart to try to put yourself out there. It's common sense. A political candidate should be transparent in answering questions and talking about what they're going to do. On the other hand, the candidate they are running is Kamala Harris. Okay, so there's a reason why they've tried to keep her locked away as long as possible, because internally the Democrats know that every time she opens her mouth, she tanks herself politically, and that's part of her problem. It's what she did back in 2020 when she tried to run for president in that primary, and it's arguably what she's doing now. We've been deeming it the October collapse because in many ways that's what you're seeing, but I guess we'll have to find out, because I personally don't really think this interview circuit is doing her any favors. I think the more she opens her mouth, the more that, first of all, Americans just don't like her, but also secondly, the more she opens doors for herself to just say something really stupid like that ultimately doesn't do a whole lot to further her in this race. But with that said, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. And until next time, I've been Vince with RTM News. Peace.